You're listening to 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College in Garden City, New York. I'm Bill McIntyre here with Jon Gallo for another edition of this week's Long Island News, the news show that brings you news stories about Long Island and about Long Islanders. Well, now we're very happy to welcome to the show for the first time and in studio with us, Nassau County's Comptroller Elaine Phillips. Now, Comptroller Phillips was inaugurated into office this January. This follows previous elected official roles as New York State Senator from the 7th District and serving as the mayor of the village of Flower Hill, following a successful career in the private sector. Well, it's very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you also, Bill. And John, thank you for having me here today.
I can't imagine anybody who's got a fuller plate than you do, riding herd on everything financial for Nassau County.
It's a big job. It's a big responsibility. The role really is as the chief fiscal officer for the county. And I see my role as the independent protector of our taxpayer dollars. So that is a big responsibility. I'm honored and excited to be doing it.
I have one question before we start, just for me and for the listening public. I've heard two different words, comptroller and controller. Now, what's the difference and why do we keep screwing it up?
So I am so glad that you asked that. I'm going to tell you a funny story. So when they asked me to run for the Nassau County Comptroller, I, naturally, being in the private sector for 35 years, was saying controller, C-O-N. But of course, government is not like the rest of the world. And actually in government, it's C-O-M-P, comptroller. So I looked it up and I thought, why is this? And could never find an answer for that. And when I was first out campaigning, I naturally would say controller, and my husband, God bless him, would say to me, Elaine. So I now rolls off my tongue as comptroller, but I really have found no reason other than government wanting to be different than the private sector.
Okay, I feel better now.
That's
about
funny.
Yep,
there's our little lesson for the day on the etymology and the distinctions, of course. But as you said,
etymology of comptroller. That's what we need to
know. That's a Jeopardy question, I'm sure, someday. But point being is that thank you again for joining us. We know, like you said, a lot of responsibilities as the chief fiduciary, kind of official for the county. But before we really discuss a lot of the office's priorities and get your thoughts on recent local news, we wanted to point out that it's still Women's History Month, and you did make history by becoming this year the first woman to serve as comptroller of Nassau County. So can you tell our listeners the importance of representation in government and other careers like finance, especially for young women, maybe some of the listeners who might be students right here at the college?
Right. Thank you for asking that question. And you're correct. I am the first female comptroller for Nassau County. I actually was the first state senator representing the 7th Senate District, first female. I wasn't the first female state senator from Long Island. There actually was one woman before me. I was the first female mayor of my village, so I have a few firsts in there. And, I said something during my inauguration to the audience, and I said it to the young women out in the audience, but I also recently went to the Carl Place High School and spoke to a couple of a leadership group there, and I really said it to them, is you have to take opportunities when they arise. And are you going to be totally prepared every time? The answer is maybe not. I mean, you can't get above what you're qualified for, too far above. But if you don't grab opportunities and say yes, opportunities are going to pass by. So was I totally prepared to be the mayor of the village of Flower Hill when they asked me to? I was a trustee, had been a trustee for several years. Was I totally prepared? The answer was no, but someone needed to step up. Superstorm Sandy happened almost immediately. And the skill set that I brought to the table was that multitasking, was that compassion, was that ability from my years in the private sector to call and make connections to figure out how my residents in the village of Flower Hill were going to get their power back, which was over 14 days in our village. So are we totally prepared? The answer may be not always. But if you don't say yes and you don't grab opportunities are going to pass by. And, you know, as you mentioned at the beginning of the show, I do have 3 daughters. They're adults. They're not children anymore. They haven't totally settled yet in their life. But it was important for me, as, you know, every parent, to be a role model for your children.
As far as a role model goes, your kids have seen you, you've been out there.
Yeah. Yeah,
so you really you mixed it up with in the music business. It's funny, they say if you want to get better playing your instrument, play with people who are better than you. Well, a lot of times you're not going to be prepared for that. The same thing. You can't know what the width of the job in mayor is until you're sitting behind the desk and say, "Oh, I didn't realize I had to do this too, and I have to do that." So
yeah. And to that point, I'm sure there are plenty of male counterparts who were underprepared to take a role, but like you said, took full advantage of the opportunity presented to them, merited it or not so much. So yeah, to your point, Comptroller, that is certainly important to hear. Especially, I know, like you said, in the finance sector, where that as well can be a little bit more male dominated. But I'm sure that's been changing over your time in the industry too.
And I always say that industry is further ahead than sometimes people give it credit. And I don't know if we'll go down the diversity route. I'd love to at some point in this discussion. Mm-hmm. But, I chaired our diversity efforts at Goldman Sachs in, 1999. We were well ahead of at least government when it came to diversity efforts. So
right.
I think, I'm going to make one other point too. It's important to put good people around you also. How do you succeed in life?
Oh, yeah. Well,
you're a team.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't believe in that team spirit, it's much harder to succeed. Obviously, there are career paths that are very independent, but in government, you need to have a good team. And I have been blessed in every one of my roles to have an amazing team around me.
See, I think of my mom celebrated her 93rd birthday a couple of days ago. Well, she's not having a very good time. She's, but the thing I think of, she worked for New York Telephone for 37 years, I guess. And in all of that time, one of the things, and I look back just to see, and it was pay disparity. She was a supervisor. She never made what the males made.
Right.
And I was going to ask you, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but are you treated that same way in private industry and in government?
Not that I've been aware of. So Wall Street is performance driven. So, and it was measured performance. So it was a little easier to say, if I did X, my colleague, male, female, whoever beside me did X. There was some subjectivity to it, but it really was easier to pay. Was there probably pay differential? The answer is probably yes.
Yeah.
I've been away from that industry for quite a while now. Government, I don't believe so. Particularly when it comes to the civil service. So in the comptroller's department, there's 84 employees, of which 70 to 72 are civil service. Okay. So they're part of the union. They take a civil service exam. They do not change depending on whoever comes into the elected position.
Okay.
And in my case, because it's a very technical department, I have CPAs, benefit specialists, payroll specialists, claims specialists, auditors, with years of experience in many cases, and extremely diverse. Many first-generation individuals, because they come from other countries, and they are so excited, so proud to be an American citizen. Right. And, they they gravitate to government.
Sucking it in like a sponge.
Oh, my goodness.
Right. That's the best way to learn, though.
It's wonderful. It's wonderful. And they are such hardworking, devoted individuals. So in that case, it's very, there's defined roles, there's tiers, these steps. I know the individuals in my administration that I was able to bring once elected, there is obviously no pay, but your mother experienced it, hands down. Hands down. Well, and it's still out there.
Right.
Let's not say it's not out there.
Yeah,
it's still out there.
Well, then I would say
hopefully the gap is closing.
Yeah, right. But as a woman in all of the positions that you've had, you're, even Goldman Sachs, okay, you may have done X and you really are entitled to this, but you have to hold somebody's feet to the fire to get it.
Yeah.
You don't just, although I can imagine, too, it says Comptroller Nassau County, and under the salary line, there's just one number. It doesn't say, but if you're a woman, wait a minute, read the parentheses, No. So, so it doesn't say that. But
that would certainly be a large issue if any, municipal government had something like that in place in the modern day, I'm sure. But let's remind our listeners that they are listening to this week's Long Island News here on 90.3 WHPC, the radio voice of Nassau Community College, here with Bill McIntyre, myself, Jon Gallo, and thankfully joined by Nassau County Comptroller Elaine Phillips. Switching gears a bit to some of your office's priorities, now that, again, you are the comptroller, we know that you have begun auditing the county's assessment previously, how it was handled under Laura Curran, and that whole property tax reassessment, countywide is a big issue that everyone knows about and everyone, talks about, but it's the idea of how do we find the solutions to a better system. So can you tell us, some of those things that are at the top of the list to hopefully, take a swing at this and do it in a way that hopefully is a little more equitable to everyone, or at least the perception is?
Sure, I'd love to talk about this. I'm going to step back just quickly. So the audit function is one of the functions of the Comptroller's Department, and it is the function that I would say, if there is any glamour, it's the one that people know about. But let me also just give a shout out to our vendor claims area. We process 50,000 claims go through our office. No payment is made for any vendor that deals with Nassau County without coming through our office. We also have our payroll area. We produce 4 payrolls every 2 weeks. That's a lot of payroll, right? Oh. We deal with 10 different collective bargaining agreements. So this is not like the private sector where, yes, there might be one union and then non-union. We have 10 different collective bargaining agreements.
Wow.
We also oversee the benefits. We have over 8,000 active employees, 12,000 retirees. But when you pull all the dependents, we are the benefit specialists. We make sure that they're getting the benefits for over 50,000 individuals, many of which don't live in Nassau County anymore because they've retired. Mm-hmm. We close the books for Nassau County, so we will publish the final financial report for the county for 2021 in June of 2022. So we have a whole staff of accountants. Now we're going to get back and then we have our audit division, which is what people hear about the most. So the first thing, any Nassau County taxpayer knows or has questioned their assessment for the last X amount of years. Mm-hmm. And we've gotten to a point where anywhere from 60 to 70,000 people grieve their taxes. And we will always have a right. We're a democratic country. We will always have the right to grieve our taxes. But why do people grieve? For some reason, we can come up with a lot of them, but for some reason, they have lost confidence in our Department of Assessment, their assessed value. Let me also say that putting market values on a county the size of Nassau County and as diverse as Nassau County is difficult. In an ideal world, each of the towns would do their own assessing. Each of the villages would do their own assessing. And in fact, in many cases, or some cases, villages do their own assessment. But in the 1930s, someone made a decision to institute a county guarantee, and our county changed. So what is the county guarantee? The county guarantee says that if you grieve your taxes and it goes through this commission and your assessed value is lowered, therefore the tax rate that's implied to it may imply, and I can explain later why it may, not always, lower your taxes. And you've already paid your school taxes to the school, even though, because remember,
But is the grievance for a school tax?
it's your assessed value. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes. It's the value.
Don't lose us.
Yes,
You know this stuff.
Yes, of course. So what happens is the county makes that individual whole, makes the school district whole. So we have this county guarantee. Now, if I had to guess, the people back in the 1930s thought, well, one, it was a simpler way of life, right? And they probably took the money in, made the float, so made the interest for whatever period of time they had to pay the police or pay the school districts or pay the sewer districts.
Yep.
And conceptually, it made a lot of sense. But there are only two, New York City and Nassau County are the only two counties in all of New York State that have this county guarantee. And the only government entity that could eliminate the county guarantee is the state. It would have to go through the state legislature, be passed. The governor would have to sign it. And it's not that simple to unwind this whole thing. So let's go back to this reassessment. We know people are concerned about their taxes. The one way that they can do something about that is by grieving their assessed value. Mm-hmm. You're not grieving your taxes. You're grieving your assessed value.
Yeah.
Okay? Mm-hmm. But remember also that it's a zero-sum game, which is an economic term, but the cost of the county doesn't change, right?
The bills still come in.
The bills still come in. Mm-hmm. They're still the same. I'm going to use $3 billion. It's actually the budget's about $3.6 billion. But for our math, let's use $3 billion.
Sure.
So you two grieve. You get your assessed value to go down, and I don't grieve. Well, guess what? Somebody has to pick it up. So I pick up your portion.
Well, if you don't grieve, does it go up that much? Or
Sure. It depends on how many people grieve and how they lower your assessed value. So it's a zero-sum game. All it's doing is shifting.
Robbing Peter to pay Paul. Constantly.
Well, you grieve.
In a sense.
So now let's get back to the point. You're always going to have the right to grieve. Mm-hmm. We live in a democratic country. So what do we do? What do we do? We have to get you, the homeowner, comfortable that you say, you know what? My home is worth $500,000. My neighbor's house, I just saw it sell. It sold for $505,000. The other neighbor had a little smaller yard. It sold for $490,000. I'm comfortable with my assessed value. Therefore, I don't see a reason to grieve. The prior administration, let's go back. prior administrations, for various reasons, froze the tax roll. You cannot freeze your assessed roll. Just can't, because markets move, right? Right now, it's harder to buy a house because there's such strong demand. We saw the outflux of New York City.
Yep.
So people's appraised values, their market values are going up. So you have to allow, for good government, you have to allow your assessed values to go up. What's happening right now? Some of the North Shore is starting to flatten out. Some areas in the center of Nassau County are rising, so they're going to see their assessed values go up. We have got to get the consumer, the homeowner, comfortable to say, you know what? I understand it, and I agree with it, therefore I'm not going to grieve this year. Mm-hmm. Maybe in 2-3 years from now.
You sound very optimistic. I think that some people feel that it's fiscally responsible to grieve every time you get the chance. Only because why not
conditioned to be that way?
Why not take a shot? You know,
well,
they just think, listen, this is just smart home ownership. That's what they would, rather better money in my pocket than in somebody else's. I mean, I agree with you that, they may do something different if they felt better about. I just think they don't know how it works.
So other states, what they've done is they have put restrictions on grieving your taxes. They have, I think it's New Jersey, you can only grieve once every 3 years. There are other states that say if your value difference, once it's examined, is not more or less, in this case, than 10%, your grievance does not get processed. Oh. They have put fees, administrative fees, to at least make the homeowner think twice. And, there is this mathematical possibility that if your grievance, your percentage of, and you use a tax certiorari company, which right. I have no problem with these companies. I'm a capitalist. I believe supply and demand. If there's demand, there's going to be supply. Right. And that's the reason why our economy works so well here in the United States. But there is a fee to do that. And the way the math works, that if enough people grieve, what happens is that tax rate goes up. And we're working on something that we're going to demonstrate and do either go out into the community and explain it right. or put it up on our website. Or we have a newsletter. Please, everyone, go to the website, Nassau County Controller. Right on the front page, there is a way to sign up for our newsletter. It comes email. It has lots of information that will on transparency of Nassau County government. But at some point, actually, even though your assessed value is lowered, the cost of paying for that grievance, you may end up paying higher taxes.
Yeah, right.
There is a mathematical point where that happens.
I think it's just kind of a shifting money. If I grieve my taxes, and I'm just going to pick a number so that it's so they saved me $250, but that company wants me to pay them $246. So I made $4.
You made $4, and I didn't grieve. You made me pay more because you made me pay the $246.
Right, so that's
in
what's
a very
happening.
Simple example. If there were only 3 of us, okay?
Yep. Right.
So your $246 savings, John and I have to pick up.
It shifts the burden to the other folks, like you said, who haven't grieved.
Is this the way to explain how 2 houses that seem approximately the same, one has a tax bill of X and the other one has a tax bill of X plus 10?
Well, there could be multiple reasons. The most likely reason is X grieved and Y didn't, okay? Therefore, the tax burden was shifted. Now, one of the things that I promised in my campaign, and I know our county executive has has been very concerned about in order to get people comfortable, because we found multiple examples where there were two homes paying significantly different taxes. Mm-hmm. What we need to do, we as the Comptroller's Office, we as our audit team, is to go in and look at that reassessment that was done for it's actually the 2020, 2021, but for simplicity, the 2021 year. Was it done correctly? Now, was it done to industry standards? Was quality control done on it? If quality control was done on that reassessment, were the errors corrected? So in order to start the process for the county executive and county legislature to make changes, I believe, as does the county executive, as does, I guess, many of the county legislators believe, that we have to make sure what was done in 2021 for the 2021 tax year was done according to industry standards, right, and the corrections have been made. That is the first step to making changes. The second step, and I've said this loud and clear, is we can never. The prior administration froze the roll again. They called it a pause. Pause. It was a freeze. The synonymous, the two words.
Semantics, yep.
Exactly. That is the last thing in the world that we need to be doing in order to keep, our tax roll correct. We have to allow those market fluctuations.
Right.
Again, remind our listeners that they are listening to this week's Long Island News here on 90.3 WHPC, the radio voice of Nassau Community College, here with Bill McIntyre, myself, Jon Gallo, and thankfully joined again in studio by Nassau Comptroller Elaine Phillips.
Good job, John.
Yeah, trying to set the time marks there. But okay, so you did just mention your partnership with the county legislators, and in particular, two that we have interviewed before, who I know you'll be working closely with on this, would be Legislator Steve Rhodes from Belmore and Legislator John Ferretti from Levittown on this new legislative assessment committee. So can you talk about what their roles will be and how, again, the county obviously has a main role from the legislative side in trying to make some of these fixes with your office?
Well, we are totally independent, the comptroller's role, and we have to remain independent.
Of course.
The comptroller does not report to the county executive. The comptroller does not report to the county legislature.
So you're kind of like Elliot Ness.
Yeah. And,
right.
So our
collaboration then, yeah.
Our role truly will be to report our findings. We will obviously be more than willing to meet with Legislator Rhodes' committee to report our findings, but at the same time, we're going to be reporting them to the public simultaneously. Obviously, my guess is they will want to meet with us because we can get into more detail with them versus a press report. But there will be a public report, hopefully in the next couple months. Normally audits take years, but what we're trying to do is break this one up, and we're trying to do smaller reports. So this report will just focus on that reassessment. Then we'll do a report on the impact of the 5-year phase-in. Then we're going to do probably a continued audit of what did the pause, what kind of impact did that have on it. I mean, there's a wonderful audit that was done by the Comptroller's Office and published at the end of the year. If anybody wants to read it, it's on the Assessment Review Commission. It's called ARC. And the impacts, but it really does lay out a roadmap of what can be done in order to get our assessment in a better condition, our whole Department of Assessment, how assessments are done. A lot of it's already been laid out. When I talked about what other states, it talks about that. So if anybody wants some good reading, go look at that audit because and you know what? I'm going to tell you, and I get excited about this. If you read the first 30 or 35 pages and you read the last 30 to 35 pages, you are going to be so better educated on how this whole process takes
well,
place.
I think that's probably the thing. Everyone expresses their concerns and talks, but do people really know the mechanics of this thing? I know I don't. I really don't.
Well, that's the thing.
We've been talking about it forever, John, and we still don't know how to unravel it.
Well, that's the thing. Again, sometimes perception and reality, and understanding that you need an informed democracy. Not just obviously the loudest voices in the room. Kind of yelling whatever their kind of ideological points may be. But that said, so I get it on the county, like you said. Obviously, there's independence, but there probably is some collaboration.
Sure.
But then, let's say going back to your experience on the state level, and you did refer to a lot of these changes needing to be, done through legislation that gets signed by the governor's office, whoever that may be, whenever it is, in theory. But I guess what can you kind of bring to the table in that sense of having been in Albany? And I know we've talked to Senator John Brooks, so I don't know if your kind of periods in office overlapped or not, but I know he has some policy out there that we've talked about with some legislators too, to try to reform some of the kind of school funding kind of calculations. How does that play, I guess, and just your thoughts on your experience, like I said, in the Senate and on that, I believe the Finance Committee and other ones related, how that might help you kind of maybe mold some policy with, maybe the delegation on Long Island at the state level.
Right. So I don't know Senator Brooks' legislation, but I will make a comment in general. So I understand the system better. There has to be a will by our state electeds to make the changes, and I don't know their opinion on that.
Right.
So.
Interestingly, talking about taxes with people, your citizens of Long Island, they don't seem to be extremely upset by the property taxes because I guess they can anticipate what that's going to be from year to year. They kind of, okay, I'm going to get hit with this. It's the school taxes and the reason we had Senator Brooks on, and he really was the only one that we've spoken to. He's attempting to do something, because Long Island is the only place that deals with their school funding the way we do. You don't see budget battles, from schools in Ohio. And I think he's talking about let the citizens pay their taxes to the state and let the states deal with the school systems and give them their funding and figure that out on a different level so that we don't have a budget battle every a couple of years. And again, when a school budget gets turned down, it's a quick turnaround. They usually dump sports and arts and to try to lower the number and then say, okay, here it is again, and somehow it passes.
Well, if Senator Brooks, or you're implying socialism, that's not going to happen, is my guess. He'll never get that through, and I by no means am implying that that's what he was, he's talking about. Look, it's in the details. I mean, there is a reason why you elect a board of ed. And that Board of Education, and I say this not just with school districts, I say it at every level of government, we each owe ourselves to make sure we do our homework. And that's easier said than done sometimes with the media, because I will tell you, the media has not, print media has not been a friend of mine. And I think it's because I have an R at the end of my name, and it's not for my maiden name Reedman. It's political. And, prior to going into state level government, I never met the Nassau County Democratic Party. I never met the Nassau County Republican Party. I was a citizen of Nassau County. But once you go up into that level of government, party politics come into play. And you and I had this discussion. I'm a firm believer in bipartisan government. But people need to understand, look, that's why you have elections. If you believe your school budget is too big or too small, you need to go out and do something about that.
Oh, that's true. John and I...
One way is to vote.
We continually tell our audiences that politics is local. I mean, we can talk about the White House and,
that's right. It is local.
It's very removed from us. But that's the one we all get involved in. When it comes to your local congressman being elected, everybody gets...
School boards, the
I'm
town
telling
governments.
You, your mayors your town supervisors, your town legislators, your county legislators have so much more impact on your day-to-day life than your federal representatives.
Yep.
But look, the other thing to keep in mind is the state is flush with federal money. Flush.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
And that money is coming to our schools. So we all need to be transparent. And as whoever the governing bodies of whatever we're talking about, sewer districts, have to be transparent on that budget process.
On the other side of this, there are stories. I mean, the perception is everything. Perception is everything. The truth will eventually find its way down the hill, but the first thing you're going to see is, and that's the soundbite that everybody goes by. I mean, one of the stories that was out there a few years ago was I'm not going to mention the school or the district, but it was a high school, and they actually had their field astroturfed, and they spent quite a few $1 million to have that done. And after the first season, when the puddles showed up in the middle of the field, they realized that they didn't grade the ground underneath it. So they ripped it up, and they did it again. And this is what people see, and the perception is you guys are getting too much money because you're just throwing it away. No planning, a carpenter will always say, measure twice and cut once. But when a big project like that gets pulled off that way, and it's terrible.
Well, let me also say that, there are many school districts out there that do a phenomenal job.
Granted.
And it's up to the community.
But again, you said it before, the ones that are doing the good things, nobody sees that. You see the one, they'll never tell you that you did it right, but they will automatically scream when you did something wrong.
So it's time to tell people when it's time to compliment people, time to say good job.
That's true too. I agree with you.
It's time to say that's
I agree with you.
At the same time, we always have to point out if there is, fraud, abuse, waste, that has to be transparent. That has to be brought out. But at the same time, we also have to give credit where credit is due.
Yeah, but I think you're right. I think we need to teach people to measure twice.
Yep, we do.
Yes. Definitely, I'm sure that rings true to, again, that fiduciary responsibility. I guess also in terms of what you were just saying, that the counties and the state are flush with money from the federal government for COVID relief. What are your thoughts? Because I know the state comptroller and some others have talked about trying to, save that money for basically trying to use it to pay back maybe some debts or to try to basically stabilize municipal kind of this financial situation. So do you think that would be prudent, or do you think that, knowing that the need is still there for a lot of county services, whether they be veteran, mental health, et cetera, that, that's kind of maybe not the way we should be going? What are your thoughts, I guess?
Well,
Comptroller?
One, depending on what pot of money came in from the federal government, there are restrictions. So first and foremost, the state has to live by those restrictions. The county has to live by those restrictions. So we have to make sure that the money is being used the way the federal government said it can be used. Right. Okay. But I think this is a tremendous opportunity to, particularly when it comes to the social services. You hit it, John. This is an opportunity to provide some funding to an industry. You mentioned it at the beginning of the show. I am on 2 non-for-profit boards, Island Harvest. We deal with food insecurity all the time, and you think, oh my gosh, we live on Long Island. There is no food insecurity. There is food insecurity.
We've had them on, actually.
Yeah, Randy's great, and let's give Long Island. Great. Yeah, Long Island Cares. Let's give Paul a shout out too, Paul. I'm also on another board called SEO Family of Services, and we are the largest provider of child and family services in the metropolitan New York area, $285 million budget. Examples here on Long Island is Madonna Heights, for those of you that live out in the Dix Hills area. We basically allow women that have had law issues when it comes to with the law or drug and alcohol as a way of becoming better citizens and getting their education. If they're a mother, we have a home and they can live with their child, and they really are being trained how to be a mother. We have services in Brownsville, in Queens, in Brooklyn, Queens. We are the largest provider of foster care. Anyway, my point is these industries work on a shoestring,
Yeah.
And
Very
the
creative.
state has, I'll say the county, but more so the state has a tremendous opportunity here to be able to provide money, federal money, to allow us, as in this industry, to be able to employ people, retain people, thank people, because they didn't stop working during COVID, right? Mental health didn't go away during COVID.
Of course, food insecurity didn't go away, unfortunately.
Food insecurity didn't go away. So my biggest wish, concern, however we want to look at it, is that our state electeds don't look at this and say, oh, we can raise, our budget line for mental health by a couple $100 million. That is not what the state needs right now. The state, all states, but we have federal money that can really be brought into the mental health industry and make a difference right now. And, COVID has shown us that my oldest daughter is finishing her PhD in clinical psychology, and she deals with, her expertise is pediatric anxiety. And what she has seen over the last 2 years is, and every parent out there, I am sure, even if your child does not have mental illness, but anxiety, from change. Children don't like change. Children like stability. And COVID is, as much as children are resilient, COVID has impacted them.
It was a 1-2 punch, I think, for a lot of people. We're talking about long-term COVID patients now.
Yes.
They don't even know what the effects are going to be in the coming years. Yeah.
And like I said, the trauma of just having to go through the experience, it's been a lot for adults to bear, but knowing that children, kind of look to adults for clarity and comfort in those moments. But, it's hard for sometimes the adults to kind of make sense of it. And thankfully, we are in a better place than we have been when it comes to the COVID, obviously, numbers, essentially. But, and we'll just echo that, we have a great relationship here with Island Harvest, of course, through the Nest, here, the pantry on campus. Been involved with them myself for a while. And definitely, like you said, these needs are certainly paramount, and a lot of them have come to the forefront. And I know people who are in those service sectors are afraid that they fall back to the wayside, and there's a struggle, for austerity and, what really needs to be funded. But knowing even with these public safety issues, having mental health services be issued at the beginning and being long-standing versus when they become acute problems when PD has to step in. We've talked to Commissioner Ryder many times about the difficulties of dealing with whether they be, as they were called, EDP calls, other kind of domestic violence calls, very volatile situations, and tough for anybody, but even law enforcement to handle. So certainly your points are well made. I'll just remind listeners, they are listening to This Week's Law and News here on 90.3 WHPC, the radio voice of Nassau Community College, here with Bill McIntyre, myself, Jon Gallo, and thankfully still joined in studio by Nassau Comptroller Elaine Phillips.
Okay. On my way in today, CBS News reported that Connecticut had signed the repeal of the gas tax. Now, of course, we've all read the one side, the other side, and how do you feel about that? Do you think it's I don't know, will it help?
So what we did as a comptroller's office, instead of getting into policy, I have a personal opinion, but instead of getting into policy, which is not the role of the comptroller, is we went out on our social media and our newsletter and our website.
You asked the people.
Well, we educated the people, and we said, this is when you pay $4.40 a gallon of gas, how much of that is taxes? And the answer is it's 69 cents.
Right. With gas at $4
and 40 cents is the example we use. Yeah. But it's and if gas goes up to $4.60, it's going to be maybe 72 cents.
Right. So on 10 gallons of gas, we're talking about $6.70. It always blows my mind to see people drive around for hours to save 10 cents on a tank of gas.
And how much did you How much gas did you use to so, is it a nice gesture? The answer is it's a nice gesture. You have to, any elected official, any fiduciary of a budget has to look at what the impact will have on the budget. I believe that there are other ways at the federal level, which I'm not here to talk about.
Right, you can't turn off the spigot or turn it on.
Exactly, right. That could be done versus saving, 17 cents or whatever it is here at the county.
Yeah, well, again, we were talking about perceptions. So having this conversation about how some of the taxes on gasoline were supposed to go to fixing our roads. So
it was an MTA tax.
We were speaking to one of the assemblymen or whatever, and I said, okay, well, here's the deal. If I pay the gas tax, I have potholes. If I don't pay the gas tax, I have potholes. Which do you think is better for me?
You're making me laugh.
Well, it's not where it doesn't seem to be that's where it's going.
But let me tell you something about potholes. Now I'm going to put my mayor hat on here.
Good.
So what happens to roads when it gets freezing weather and then it gets nice weather? You know what happens to roads? They get potholes.
They crack, yeah.
And I was well educated by my superintendent at the village level to say that you can't patch those holes too early. The good thing is, I believe the county has a 311 or a way to report, a hotline to report potholes. Please report them. I am confident that our DPW at the county level gets those messages. The problem sometimes, we don't know if we're on a county, a state, or a village road. So, do us a favor and report it at every level of government.
Well, part of that is...
But you can't fix those potholes too early in the year. It really starts about now, because if we fix them too early, they're just going to reopen up.
Well, speaking with Town of Oyster Bay Supervisor Saladino,
yes.
He clued us in, and it's the first time we'd ever heard it, because we were talking about actually Route 109 in Farmingdale is probably one of the worst offenders, but that does cross the Suffolk County border. It's one of those. Oh. You're going down Staple Street, that's a Nassau County road. If you make a right, you're on a state road, and if you make a left, it's crazy. But he did enlighten us to the idea that a mile worth of road cost $1 million.
It's expensive.
I was stunned, but I would imagine. Every loaf of bread's $6 now. The same thing. That never happened before. So to think of all of the spots that you've seen on Long Island, ka-ching, we're really talking about piling up the money for. So that's one of the things. If they take the gas tax back, we're going to have to make it up, like you said before with the assessments. Somebody's not paying it, somebody else has to.
Costs don't go away.
Right. So that's 67 cents or whatever it is. But again, perception. One of the things that just gets me is driving on whatever, usually state roads, I guess, and they have this section of road sponsored by, and some company sends their workers out there to clean up and people think to themselves, we pay so much in taxes, and yet we have to ask these people to come out and clean us as volunteers. Not that volunteering isn't a good thing. Yeah. But when we're paying for services and then we are asked to volunteer to do those services, you start to scratch your head. Right. Say, I'm actually doing the job, and someone else is getting paid to do it.
Well, let me also say, people ask me, what's the one thing that surprised you the most when you went into the role as Nassau County Comptroller? And this is not a surprise. This is a positive comment. How hard working the employees of Nassau County are. So this perception that government workers come in and they leave, and look, there are union rules. So if you work more time than the union negotiated rules, you either get paid overtime or you get time credited to you. So Yes, but those are established by the union. The fact is, we are very blessed in Nassau County. We have a skilled workforce that is dedicated and devoted to this county. And I have to say it because you can't point fingers and say, oh, they're a government worker.
Oh, yeah.
I'm telling you.
Oh, yeah. No, I don't think anybody's pointing their fingers at the DPW worker who's wielding a shovel. I think it's more the administration who tells them where they're going to work and what they're going to do during the day. That becomes...
We're going to have an argument on that one.
Okay.
But,
that's fair. That's,
people are doing their jobs.
Oh, yeah.
Now,
I'm sure they are.
You know what? There's a lot of roads in the villages and the towns and, the county and the state. And can you be everywhere at all times? The answer is no. But I will tell you, I'm confident. I know at the village level, I'm sure at the county level and the state level, roads are graded. So there's A, B, C, and D, and they do an evaluation every so many couple years. And, that road that's a C can turn into a D pretty quickly.
Sure.
And that's when people start to say, oh, my gosh, what happened to my road? Well, hopefully that road is on the list. And if it's not, that's why you call your elected officials and raise a little.
That's the other thing that we learned on this show, which was even enlightening to me. You have a local problem in your neighborhood. People's first response is not to call their councilman or call their assemblyman. And it's enlightening and surprising to find out that's what they're there for.
Right. And we want them to call.
Bingo.
We want you.
Yep.
Like any role, running your home, you may not know something's wrong, but if somebody walks in and says, you have a clicking in your dryer, you should get it fixed, whatever it is.
Yep.
So, yes, I would say elected officials want to hear from their constituents. Our job as elected officials is to listen. Mm-hmm. Someone asked me this the other day. What are your priorities? So I went through, the list of short-term priorities. They said, well, where are you going after that? I said, I don't know yet.
Right.
I don't know yet.
I'm going to find out.
I'm going to listen.
Right.
I'm going to listen.
Right.
I'm going to, I'm going to take notes. I want to hear.
I got to tell you, when you said before, we had a question and I went out and asked the people. I said, wow, what a novel idea. What a novel idea.
I work for you, for your audience. Your audience doesn't work for me.
Right.
So, yes, I was elected to have ideas, but I'm also elected to listen and do what the people are asking me to do. Yeah. And you know what? That sometimes takes maturity and age to understand that.
And the police commissioner and I have a favorite saying, and it's that cooler heads need to prevail.
Yes.
How does NIFA fit into all of your plans, seeing as how they are constantly looking over your shoulder, symbolically anyway?
Well, they're looking over the shoulder, literally. So my opinion on NIFA is there are defined reasons for a government entity to have a non-elected entity to control. I believe that Nassau County may be in a position that we should no longer be in that control period. Now, we need to look at the final financial condition of the county for 2021. We know the county had surpluses for the last couple years. That's already public information. I believe, but an outside auditor is right now in our offices auditing the books. Right. We will come up with our publication at the end of June. I believe the county will show a strong fiscal position. We need to look for the next couple years because that's something that, although not as clearly defined in these bullet points of being in a control period, but I think what bothers me, I'm not saying there wasn't a reason for control, but you have a group of individuals. And again, not questioning their intelligence. I mean, these are highly qualified individuals. There are political affiliation, and I hope that they keep politics out of it. But we'll see. But they're not elected.
Right.
They are making financial decisions for our county and do not report to the taxpayers of Nassau County. It seems absurd to me as long as Nassau County is in a sound fiscal position. So I hope, and I say this positively to NIFA, I hope we are out of this control period this year.
Right.
I really do, because that is a good news. That means Nassau County is in a good fiscal position.
Right.
There will be oversight because of the debt that was the refinancing of the county debt that was done last year that has, I believe, a 15-year term. So the oversight, the concept of NIFA, don't forget, NIFA costs us a couple $1 million a year of our tax dollars to employ them.
Everybody's
so
making
let's
money.
not forget that it costs us money. And when there was a reason, I have no problem. But when there's no reason, it's time to get out from the control. Can I tell you two really cool things about myself? Because I think we're really, because it's the things that people are, it's a personal thing. So big martial artist, Subakdo Mudokwan.
I read that.
Yeah, train 5 days a week, fifth degree black belt. And the reason I adopted a 5.5-year-old Great Dane was because of this election. So we are the proud parents of Gus.
Oh, that's
And he's
great.
a 126-pound Great Dane, and he's a mush. He's a lover boy.
Very cool. Well, I tell you what, we could discuss things, and you have to come back.
I'll come back.
Yes,
Thank
definitely.
you.
Please come back.
I'd love to.
Because we could go for another 3 hours
Yeah,
here,
we
I think,
could.
just asking questions and digging into things. Very interesting.
Please ask your listeners to reach out to my office if they need anything. Look at us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. If you do Office of Comptroller, Nassau County Comptroller, you'll find us. Sign up for our newsletter.
Perfect. Excellent. That's and it was wonderful to have you. Thanks for carving out this much time to talk to us, because I know you're going to run someplace and do some more busy stuff. I'm going to go take a nap. In any event, the clock on the wall says it's time for this week's Long Island News to move on out of here, and we thank you for joining us and remind you can catch this week's Long Island News every Friday at 3 p.m. right here on 90.3 WHPC.